welcome and welcome to our Youth Leaders Gathering 2.0. My name's Susie Aldridge and I head up DTI. I'm based in Nottingham and I'm also pastor at a local church called Trent Vineyard as well. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's great to have you with us when you could be doing anything else this evening. We're really, really excited about the evening, about all that's going to be going on. And just wanted to let you know the format of the evening. So what we're going to be doing is Laura Hancock is here. Going to introduce her in a moment. She's going to be doing a little 7-minute mini thought. We're going to give you an update about streaming the impossible. Then the sort of chunk of the evening, the bulk of the evening, we're going to be having a live Q&A with a great panel. We're going to introduce those in a bit. And then we'll have an opportunity to break out, just to chat, to meet some people and to pray together at the end. So I'd love to hand over to Zeke, who'll tell you a little bit more.
Hey guys, great to see you. So many of you joined us this time. We're so grateful that you've come and you're with us. Hey, my name's Zeke, and it's real good to have you. I work for DTI full time and the youth network across the Vineyard movement. So it's been this time in this lockdown period, been on so many Zooms, connecting with different young people and youth leaders all around the UK. I'm based here in London, in Southwest London. And I just want to share a few things that are going to come up on the chat now with you guys. If you joined us in our first online gathering, you will have seen maybe some of these things, but just wanted to draw your attention to them if you're new or you haven't come across these before. As DTI, on our website, we when lockdown started at the beginning of lockdown, we made like a digital guide for the way to navigate communications and all that kind of stuff. So that's there. It's a resource from us. We've got with us tonight Martin Saunders, the legend that is, who works for Youthscape. They've been awesome during lockdown. You can head over to their website. That's going to come up. Fusion, with our friends at Fusion, and any of you who've got young people that are at the older end and are heading off to uni this year, whatever that's going to look like, they're doing a great job of doing stuff, preparing young people for that. And also, you might have seen today, the government released guidelines for places of worship. This is particularly in England. So if you're Wales, Scotland or Ireland, Northern Ireland, you might be slightly different, but you can head over and have a look at that stuff. But yeah, Susie, over to you again.
Yeah, brilliant. So really, really helpful. I've had a scan of those of the documents, and they're long and quite comprehensive, and as ever a little bit grey. But as we try to navigate this new season together, over the next few weeks, there'll be some changes, and probably there will continue to change as well. So do have a read of that, particularly if you do live in England, because you might find it really helpful. So Laura, we're going to head over to you now. So Laura has become a friend of mine, and she's brilliant. She works for Youth for Christ, where I think your job title is the National Ministries Director. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I stalked you earlier on. And she's on the Limitless leadership team as well, which is another youth festival who we're hoping to share the site with. And hopefully she's going to be speaking at DTI 2021, subject to where we're at with the coronavirus situation. So Laura, you might want to say anything else. She's a Liverpool fan, and so she's delighted that Liverpool have won the league. So Laura, over to you, mate.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been a very good week or so in my household. My family are delighted, as am I. I wanted to just start this evening in my very short semi-thought with you guys. I just wanted to start by saying thank you, really. Thank you for being youth leaders, and thank you for being people that are prepared to serve and invest and love relentlessly, no matter what is going on in the nation, no matter what pandemics we face or global crises we face. You guys just keep going, keep serving, keep loving, often even when it doesn't feel like you've got a lot left to give. So thank you so much for all that you give, firstly. The other thing, I just really wanted to honour Susie and Zeke as well, as leaders, and they are incredible leaders with generous, kind, loving hearts. They really shine Jesus in what they do. So it's a real honour, I think Martin would say the same, to have the privilege of being with you guys tonight. So thank you so much for allowing us to be in your virtual space. But what I wanted to speak on this evening, it's a Bible passage that you guys, I'm sure, will have read a million times over and know really well. So it's from 1 Corinthians 9, verses 24 to 27, and it says this: don't you realise that in a race everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize, so run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadow boxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified. And I guess what the question I felt was right to pose tonight was this idea of what's your prize? I think there is nothing like a global pandemic to make you reassess what your prize is. What is it that you value? What is it that is the thing you have been called to chase and pursue in ministry, in your personal life, in your home life, in your relationship with God? And so what would you say your prize is? And it's a really important question, because what your prize is will determine how you run. I am not a big runner. I do run. I'm pretty sure there are some elite runners here. I met a man today who does, I think he said 12 marathons a year. That is not me. But what I have found is that I've eaten a lot in lockdown, and so therefore I've had to run more to compensate for the amount of eating. So one of the things that I have done is I've started running a little bit further because I've had the time. And what I've noticed is that depending on what my goal is in that run will totally determine the run that I do. So if I'm doing a short run, my prize will be to run fast and run quick and get a really good time. There's one run that I do that's a long run, and there's a mega hill in the middle of it. And I know that if I don't pace myself, there is no way that I'm getting to the top of that hill. And so my prize is to get to the top of the hill in one piece. And so I run differently because my prize is in my mind of being a totally different thing to if I'm wanting a quick time. And so knowing what your prize is really important. You know, the thing that enables me to run well and run for my prize is actually discipline and self-discipline. And keeping my eyes on what matters, no matter what the season is. Knowing what my prize is, no matter what the season throws at me. And discipline's an interesting thing. I don't really like it. I don't really like the whole self-discipline thing, if I'm honest. I know I don't know you guys very well, so some of you might be like, man, what have you been doing? But I'm not good with the discipline thing. In my life, my many years I've been alive, I've tried to read 3 books on self-discipline or spiritual disciplines. I gave up on 2 of them partway through. And the 3rd one I finished as a matter of pride, because I didn't want to be the person that was so undisciplined that I couldn't finish a book on self-discipline. So I dragged myself through the 3rd one, and who knew there was some gold in there. And one of the things that it said about self-discipline is that the reason discipline is important is because you can't be a part of the solution while you're still a part of the problem. And discipline is being obedient and curbing your will so that you're part of the solution. So for example, if I look at my world and I think that we should not be pursuing consumerism, we need to be looking after the environment, then I need to engage some self-discipline and not order quite as many Amazon packages as I have done in the last 3 months. I think I have single-handedly kept Amazon afloat. Equally, if I want to pursue and have as a prize a world where there are no more broken homes, broken families, where families are united and protected and a loving environment, then I need the self-discipline to be the very best wife, very best daughter that I can possibly be. And I need to put my discipline into place with that. If I want to create a world where God's rhythms are seen through the way that I live, then I need to pursue the discipline of rest and the discipline of Sabbath. And it's not until I start to be a part of the solution in those areas that we can begin to solve the problem. And so whatever your prize is that God is calling you to pursue, discipline is a really key part of that. And discipline really is about obedience, and it's about trust. It's about trusting that God will do enough and I don't need to compensate for that. It's trusting that God and his prize is the thing that is worth pursuing beyond the thing that my will would want to pursue. I think often when I think about discipline, it's often me taking things back into my own hands. And so what my prize might be in this season, in the season where we're reassessing so much as youth sort of ministry professionals, this time last year as someone as a part of the Limitless team, I might have said that a really great prize would for all to have had a really great festival in 2020, that our summer festivals would have been sensational. We would see so many people come to know Jesus through festivals, and them to have gone really well. But somehow along the line, God knew that that wasn't the prize for this year. And maybe the things that we valued weren't the things that God was putting in our hearts to be a prize. And so I wonder in this season, as we think about youth ministry, as we think about our own personal rhythms, as we think about what is God is calling us to do with our ministries and with our young people, what's the prize that God is calling us to pursue? Because so often when I need to get my self-discipline to kick in, it's when I've valued a prize that isn't the prize that God has put in front of me. Maybe my prize has been myself or my ministry over Jesus and just young people connecting with him. Maybe my prize has been self-comfort. Maybe my prize has been working hard to make myself feel good and myself feel like I'm worth something, rather than taking on rest and stillness and the discipline of Sabbath. So I guess the thought for this evening is, what is the prize that God is putting in front of you compared to the prize that you're feeling like you should pursue? How closely aligned is the prize that God has for you, whether it be in ministry, your personal life, your spiritual life, your walk with Jesus? And where do those things align? As I said before, I think discipline is about trust, discipline is obedience. And I think that discipline is God's will over my will, God's world over my world, and the world that I want to create. And guess a little bit of self-reflection around, in this season, what's the thing that God is calling you to? What are the things that are core in your walk with him, in your ministry, in your home life? What's the prize that God is calling you to chase compared to the one that maybe you are chasing? So I'm just going to pray to finish, if that's okay. I think it was 8 minutes, but I'm going to roll with it. I've been unmuted. I can do all sorts of things.
You've got the power, mate. Just go for it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray on everything. Jesus, I pray that where we have valued the wrong things as individuals, as youth leaders across this nation, as family members, as disciples, God, I pray that you would gently just realign us to your will and your world over our will and our world. God, I pray that you would give us the discipline to lay stuff down where things need to be laid down, to reorder and reprioritize where that needs to happen. But God, I pray that we might be leaders who are a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. God, I pray that you would help us to run in such a way that we would run to get the prize, and you would help us to run and pace ourselves in a way that honours you and shares you with more young people. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Laura, thank you so much. Thanks so much for that. And just as you were praying there, just for some of you guys on the call, just prophetically, I just felt like that there'll be some of you this evening who, for whatever reason, you found yourself on this call, but yet you are in a season where you're just, everything's sort of up in the air and you're not really sure like what God's calling you to, what he's got for you. And I just sense the Father saying to draw close to him, and that as you do that, that he'll speak to you. So just if you're in that place, just encourage you to do that. So thanks, Laura. Thanks so much. We'll hear a bit more from you later. So we just wanted to talk real quick about Streaming the Impossible, possibly the best name for a festival you could come up with. We can say that because Zeke and I didn't come up with it. Somebody else came up with it. So we love it. The name's DTI, Streaming the Impossible. It's going to be the 31st of July to the 1st of August. And we debated for quite some time about whether or not we should stream something or shouldn't stream something. What was God saying in the mix of all of it after the disappointment of having to cancel the summer festivals? But we really do feel like over the last few months, as we've sort of weighed that up, we really feel like God spoke to us about DTI, that he impressed on our hearts this phrase, immeasurably more, that God really is the God of the immeasurably more. And that this summer, despite the fact that we can't meet together, that he still is able, with all the technology, to come and to move in power. And so we've been praying big prayers that he'd come, that we'd see young people come to faith for the first time, that we'd see healings. We're going to try and work out how we do the ministry time over online. But we're really expecting, and we'd love you all to come and join us. Zeke, you're going to talk through the practicalities.
Yeah, so in terms of some of the things that you guys can look forward to and be a part of, we're going to have 2 evening sessions. So one on the Friday night, the 31st of July, and the second on the Saturday night, the 1st of August. One of the things that we're really passionate about is we didn't just want to do a pre-recorded thing and put it on and stream it to you all and to the young people. We wanted to do something that was live and genuine and in the moment, and what we sense God was saying for young people in the time that will be when that comes, because who knows what will be happening by then as well. And so we've got the evening sessions, and myself and Susie are going to do a tag team talk. We're going to have Tando Zula, our friend from Heart Church in Nottingham, who will be speaking on the other night. We've also got an interview with Mike Pilav and a young girl called Bella Ramsey, who's a young actress, which is going to be really good. That will be in our evening. And then on the Saturday, in the build up to the second evening on that Saturday from 12, we're going to be live on Instagram. If any of you have been following us on Instagram, you will have seen every Friday we go live at 5. Laura, you were actually the first to be on that. So you christened that for us, and it's been great ever since. Only uphill. And we that's just been really good.
Well, downhill, Zeke. That sounds a bit derogatory.
Yeah, I did wonder when you said, I thought, man, I must have done a pretty bad job.
You did a great job. But
it got better from there. It improved from that point on. It's fine.
No, you set the bar, mate.
Oh, thanks, Susie.
That's what I meant to say. And so we're going to be doing live things on Instagram. These will get shown later on our YouTube channel, but we want to encourage you in everything that we're doing for you guys to be gathering your young people, whether it's a Zoom call or whether at that point we'll be able to gather in some buildings or young people in groups can gather, however it is. But we wanted to enable you guys to be able to pull in your young people. That's why you can book, which Susie will share a little bit more about in a sec. We get it after that live and those evening sessions. We'll then have after hours and late night worship. Governor B will be joining us and other guests. And quite an exciting thing is that we're going to have a merch, just a few little, bits of merchandise for young people to purchase, even maybe yourselves to purchase. But that's a little bit about the program, and more things, information will be on our social medias and email to you guys in the future as well. So Suze, tell us.
Yeah, so everything, as Zeke said, everything's on the website. You can find that on there. And I'm just reading from the screen to make sure I get all the details right. So the website, dreamingtheimpossible.org, youth leaders and young people, both you guys need to book on for that. It's totally free. And for you guys as youth leaders, mainly because we love you and because we want to forge just relationship with each other and some input as well. We'd love to involve you in that as well. So the Monday before, so Monday the 27th of July, we're going to do a youth leaders call a little bit like this to share what's going to happen with the sort of up-to-date details, what the weekend's going to look like. But mainly just as a time, as a forum to come together to cry out to the Lord that God would come and do immeasurably more, that we'd see him do all sorts of things. So we'd love at least one youth leader from every single group to come along to that, so everybody knows what's going on. And then over the weekend, there'll be a couple of youth leaders meetings and also an opportunity to receive youth leaders prophecy as well. There'll be like an online prophecy room, which you need to sign up for. You can do that when you sign up for your event ticket as well. And there'll be a limit on numbers for that. So if you want to get into that, you need to book on sooner rather than later. And any questions, our lovely team at hello@dreamingtheimpossible will help you with that. So yeah, we'd love you to come along and join us for that. So we're going to move on to the Q&A now. Without further ado, you've already met Laura, so she'll be answering some of the questions. But as Zeke mentioned earlier, we've got Martin here from Youthscape. Martin, do you want to say hello?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey?
I said thank you so much for having me.
We are so delighted that you could come, and I should have said that at the beginning. We're so thankful that both you and Laura would come and join us tonight, so thank you. So if you don't know Martin, he works for Youthscape, and is a general legend. He's also involved in his local church youth as well. And he's an author. So there's no end to your talents, Martin, is there? So anything you want to say about yourself?
Just that I've invested quite a lot in the lighting arrangement this evening, and I look like I'm set up to tell some sort of horror story, which wasn't the intention, but I've got a lamp on my face because otherwise you can't see me.
Oh yeah, the lamp, it's good with the lamp actually. Wonderful. Well, welcome, Martin. And then we've got Ben McCalla. Hey Ben, do you want to say hello?
Hello. Do you want me to say anything, or are you going to?
You go for it. You can introduce yourself, actually.
Well, I mean, I've got no idea. I'm hoping that a few people at least recognise me from DTIs in the past. But if you have no clue who I am, I'm part of the DTI team. I've been involved in DTI for many years. I love youth work and been involved in youth work in Nottingham for many years as well. I've been a science teacher for the last 4 years, and it's brilliant to have been asked to get involved in this. It's great. And
Yeah,
Susan's a dear friend of mine as well. I should probably say that the first time we met, she was wearing a saucepan on her head. So there you go.
That's true. That is in fact true. There is some context to it. And Ben was also on a date with his now wife. So I was part of the mix of it anyway. That's another story for another day. But we've also got Ben Webb, who's part of our DTI core team as well. And he's a youth pastor in Sutton Vineyard. Do you want to say hello, Ben?
Good evening.
Anything you want to say?
Not
Other
really.
than you
Just
support Liverpool as well.
I am a massive Red as well. So all the Liverpool fans out there are loving life. I've been a youth pastor for about 5 years. Before that, I worked for the council in the borough that I live in South London, and worked alongside the youth offending team there. So it's been a long old journey, but privileged to be here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. And just to say with the questions, lots of you, as you signed up, sent in your questions. So most of these questions have come from you guys, and a couple we've chucked in as well. So Zeke, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, and so we're going to start with some more big picture questions, guys. And Martin and Laura, maybe you guys wanted to start with these particular. You both connect with hundreds of youth leaders around the nation and have done for years. And so I suppose, what are some of the patterns and trends that you guys are seeing in youth ministries and young people, both locally and nationally? We know you guys might not have traveled, but you've traveled via Zoom, the amazing thing that is. And so what have you noticed locally and nationally, trends and patterns, and maybe some challenges and opportunities that you see? Martin, do you want to kick us off, mate?
Okay, thanks. So obviously we're massively generalizing, aren't we, with all of this stuff? Because as you say, like, we've been stuck in our living rooms trying to figure out what's going on all around the country. I think in the first flush of this, the first kind of 12 weeks, youth ministry moved almost wholesale online. There's some exceptions, but a lot of people moved their youth work online and tried to replicate in some way what they'd done face-to-face online. That's certainly what I did in my local church. And I think there's been some success with that. I think the focus of that has tended to be on sort of connection rather than particularly content or contact over content. I think absolutely right. And I think we've been prioritizing young people's mental health and emotional well-being, which again, absolutely the right thing to do. A couple of things may be starting to happen in terms of churches seeing a bit of a decline in engagement in that stuff. I think probably in the first few weeks, we were all convinced that this was it. This was the future. We were going to do no more physical meeting, and all of it was going to happen on Zoom. And then many of us sat through our 900th Zoom and decided that wasn't such a good idea, but that was also what young people experienced. And so certainly that's what we've seen, where I'm just down the road from Ben Webb, actually, in Reigate in Surrey. And we've definitely seen a sort of steady decline in engagement in that online stuff. And so what we have seen, like with the young people and their engagement with youth ministry, is that some young people have stayed absolutely with us and want to meet with us online and want to prioritize being part of our activities. But as all the other stuff in their lives, from sports clubs to scouts to school, started to offer more and more online activities, and actually, like, in some senses, consumer options, consumer choices for them. Some of them decided they would stop engaging so much with us. And then also, when you had the lure of being able to go and meet your friends in the park, there was even more of a reason. The ones that have stuck with us, I know I've used this phrase with you before, Zeke, the ones that have stuck with us are the ones that really see our group as their primary affiliation, or rather, they see the church, they see maybe Jesus as their primary affiliation. Those are the young people that we've retained and that we've been able to build with. But I think there's been a slow sense of a decline in a lot of, not all, some people are seeing amazing stuff continuing, but in a lot of local youth ministries, especially where there's not huge amounts of expertise, there's lots of willing, but not massive amounts of expertise, young people have started to disengage. And so now there's, more of a move towards a sort of mixed mode of youth work in a lot of places, where people are trying to think about what it means to meet physically, or at least to meet physical needs, and other stuff like that. Laura will have lots of other experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just needed to unmute again. I really agree with what Martin's saying. I think the general trend more recently has been decline. I think certainly for us, my husband is the next gen pastor in our church. He's been doing youth ministry in our church for about 10 years. But it's been fascinating to see, as Martin said, who's stuck with us and who hasn't. And it's taken where the families weren't plugged into the church, that's often where we've lost the young people that weren't already actively engaged. So we maybe had young people that were on the peripheries of the youth ministry, but we've now had to really up a gear on working with families rather than just the young person. And it's almost been that family discipleship piece that we're having to, that you knew was important before, but now is the difference between success and failure, really, in discipling a young person. What has been absolutely fascinating for us, however, is, well, we have lost some of the young people that maybe we're not engaged with the families, is where we've seen young people doing outreach. And we very quickly in our church moved into, right, this is a much easier invite for your friends. So send them a link. They haven't got to come into a room that they're not comfortable with, or come into a church where it feels alien. But would you invite your friends to watch this link to our youth meetings? And watching the young people that are still with us, and a good number are, we have lost them, as I say, watching them grow in confidence in being absolutely shocked that their friends would take them up on following a link has been actually really incredible. And so I think we're going to go into a very interesting season, I think, at the end of this, where we need to work out what it means to re-engage the disengaged. So it will be young people who already know all that we have got to say, already know how youth group works, and have chosen to opt out. And what it means to then enable the young people that are stuck around to get alongside their friends and say, "Now, come, join us again, be with us again." And really a new season for peer evangelism to be kicking in. I think the other thing I would say is that I've seen youth leaders who are really tired. I think there is a fatigue in this season, and I think it's tough, I think, to be a youth leader in this season, because you've kind of been on crisis management since March. You're now coming up to the summer, and we talk to our young people about, we're just going to rest youth group over the summer, and the panic that went throughout the youth group. How will we connect with each other? This is the routine in our week. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, on youth workers and youth leaders at the moment as well, to be that glue, that social and spiritual glue outside of the family home. So I think the other thing I've seen is a lot of tired youth leaders. And so needing to look after ourselves and look after each other, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I can see a number of people nodding along to that. Maybe some tired teddy bears on the call tonight. Laura, you're obviously with Youth for Christ. You're involved in bits of research.
Yeah.
And what are, I know you're working on some research at the moment, but what are some of the headlines of some of the things that research is showing?
So our next piece is coming out in a couple of weeks' time, and it's all around spirituality and faith of current generation of young people. So we're calling it the Z to A of faith and spirituality, and it's been really interesting seeing how young people are interested to engage spiritually, willing to engage spiritually. A lot of unchurched young people's experience of spirituality is actually fairly dark. And so that isn't something that we tend to talk about a lot in church for unchurched young people coming in, their past spiritual experiences and stuff. And so that's been interesting. Also, in terms of young people's engagement in prayer is really interesting. So not loads of young people pray, but those that do pray, when they see stuff happen, it just totally transforms their relationship and their view of God. Another fascinating take has been where young people have talked about people who have shared their experiences of God with them. So if they know a Christian and they've talked about Jesus with their friend who doesn't know Jesus, over half of the young people ask that it influenced how they saw God positively. So I think in terms of giving our young people confidence and talking to their friends about Jesus, if they talk to two of their friends about Jesus, the chances are that one of the two is going to positively influence how they see faith. But I know Youthscape have also in the last few weeks released some research that they did around a similar thing around sort of experiential faith. And it's really interesting seeing, like, sitting two pieces of research side by side, and just young people's hunger to experience God, but real questions around suffering, and particularly suffering of family. So it's almost as if they are willing to believe that there is more, but they can't quite work out the character of who God is when they look at the world around them. And I think that maybe is something that we need to, as youth leaders, need to kind of step up and lead the way on, really, and having those discussions and processing hurt and suffering a little bit better with young people.
Thanks, Laura. Martin, do you want to add anything to that?
Not a huge amount. Just we have done a piece of research into the area of experience-based evangelism and experience-based discipleship. And I think it's a really fascinating area for us all to be thinking about in the future. Essentially, the idea of, like, I guess the Bible would call it tasting and seeing that the Lord is good. You know, it's the idea of maybe not, as we've historically done, starting with kind of a list of doctrinal statements or catechisms or whatever that you need to learn and agree to, actually starting with, hey, you can experience God. I mean, I'm a massive fan of your movement. By the way, I didn't get out at the start, but I've spent some wonderful years in a vineyard church. Some of my best friends are pastors of Croydon Vineyard. I don't know if anyone from the call knows that church, but wonderful church, wonderful movement. And I know that is absolutely a kind of heartbeat for you guys, to give people young people an experience of who God is and how He can powerfully impact their lives. And I think what we've seen just in those two pieces of research is that young people may be quite switched off by religion, maybe quite switched off by some of those old. We did a piece of research recently that said young people tend not to have those classic apologetics questions anymore, but they're fascinated by spirituality, they're fascinated by Jesus, they're fascinated by Christian spirituality. And I think we have this incredible opportunity always to get young people into the presence of God. And that's where, big events like Soul Survivor saw such amazing transformation take place in young people's lives. And now we've put a little bit of research behind that, but it's been around for a long time.
Thank you. So sort of moving on, just talk a bit more about COVID. Like, how do you think, just briefly, how do you think COVID has impacted young people themselves? What are some of the trends you're seeing there, Martin?
Yeah, really briefly, young people have been somewhat overlooked in a lot of the government guidance. A lot of those, the guys standing behind the lectern every day, giving the briefing. Generally speaking, young people have been mentioned the least for the last 12, 16 weeks. Young people have lots of questions. No one's really providing them with answers to those. And I think there is a bit of a mental health time bomb among our young people, which we will need to invest in. We will need to invest in the well-being of our young people as they come through this extraordinary trauma that none of us, it is, let me be the first person on the call this evening to say it, unprecedented.
Totally unprecedented.
Thank you. If anyone had that in the bingo. But I think young people are really unsettled and they don't, like, who's giving them answers right now? So we really have a massive role to play pastorally with young people in the weeks, months, and even years to come.
Zeke, you gonna go for it? Next question.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, Ben McCalla, would love to bring you in, and then Ben Webb in a sec. Can you add some of your thoughts on this? You're a chemistry teacher, Ben. You're actually probably one of the few of us that are actually seeing young people face to face. How are they doing from your perspective? What do you think the impact has been on the young people young people that you've seen, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess as you might imagine, I'd probably say that it's similar to us as adults in that we are all completely different. So I've got there is a young person that lives across the road from me, young man. His school were very quick to put things in place at the start of lockdown. So he's been having pretty much 5 lessons a day, video call every day, Monday to Friday. He's got 2 loving parents. He's got a brother. They're all at home now. He can go out to the park. He's hanging out with his mates. You know, he's having a great time. And I'm not saying that he would have had a great time the whole time, but his experience has been pretty positive. And then I think about some of the students that I've interacted with at school, and they won't tell you, but some of them are, you know, in broken households. Some of them are constantly in touch with social services. They've had to be in school every day since the start of lockdown because it's not safe for them to be at home. They're dealing with domestic abuse. You know, they don't have internet access, so they can't access any of their online stuff, even if it's there. So it's so broad that my encouragement and challenge to all of us, and this includes myself as well, is trying to get a grip of where the young people are at, because I'm sure everyone will know that teenagers, they don't often give you much. You might be talking to them and they don't, there's not that much going on there, you know, because they're trying to hide it all and trying to put this face on, this mask on. So sometimes you just don't have a clue, and their experience may have been fairly positive. You know, some people, maybe people, young people that like sort of silence and like things to be a little bit slower. Maybe they've enjoyed some of what's happened, but others, you know, it's been an absolute nightmare. So I would say there's a huge spectrum, and perhaps in many ways, like teenagers experience, maybe the spectrum for them is just a bit wider than it is for us. Maybe it's just a little bit more extreme. So yeah, I know that's not an answer, but I'd challenge all of us, including myself, to try and get to grips with where individual young people are at, because you know, goodness knows.
Yeah, it's so helpful. Thank you, Ben. And you, Ben Webb, you're a local youth pastor, like many people on this call, or local youth leaders. Give us a snapshot into how you guys have responded, and maybe some of the lessons you've learned. As I'm sure all of us have learned, you know, it's been a steep learning curve. What's it been like for you guys?
Yeah, so let me start off by telling you something which did not go well in any way. So on that very first morning, when we thought, right, how are we going to respond to the fact that we can't meet or do this or do that anymore, we came up with this idea of creating youth sessions, plans that parents could go onto our church's website and access. And there was a little video talk there as well. And essentially from that, we learned that parents have got a whole load of other stuff going on. Who knew? Working from home and dealing with kids and all of these other pressures going on. Didn't land at all. Yeah, just felt very, very flat. So that was one of our earliest lessons. Since then, we've moved that onto kind of making YouTube videos. So trying to promote a whole family coming together and watching those sessions together, joining in discussion and learning and playing ridiculous games and all sorts. Just trying to bring the whole family together at a point that works for them. And then we've, as everyone else I'm sure has done, Zoom online small groups, which have gone very well. But as Martin predicted, we've seen some kind of fall off from that over the last few weeks. And one of the big things, as it's been mentioned already, one of the biggest lessons was noticing who in the youth group just disengaged, and we just haven't seen them since lockdown started. And it's like they've just moved out, they've left, they are gone. And then at the same time, one of the great lessons has been some of the guys that have actually engaged more because of this platform. And in a room full of 35, 40 young people where you're playing games and they're running around or having discussions, these are the quiet guys or girls who just don't necessarily say very much or input in front of that large crowd. But in the small groups on a Sunday evening, we found that actually having a little bit more space and a little bit more time to engage in a different way in those in those kind of areas has been massively beneficial. But just a shout out to anyone who during this time has felt massively discouraged because there's been a whole load of young people that you thought, oh, if ever there was a time to need Jesus and to really dig into this stuff, it's now. If you've been discouraged like me within that, then yeah, please know that you're not alone. And I know that I'm speaking to you guys and you get this, but it's just been one of those things that I've felt massively on my heart to share, that along with every one of us, there's those, instead of it being daily or weekly highlights and lowlights, it's kind of hourly or minutely. And at different points you can think, I could go on forever in lockdown. And then within a couple of minutes, you're ready to jump out of a window. So it really is that kind of roller coaster going through. But yeah, like I said, one of the biggest lessons is just trying not to be discouraged by the young people that have disengaged, and really trying to take encouragement from those guys that have engaged in a new way.
It's great, Ben. Really helpful, man. So good to encourage everyone on the call. Martin and Laura, just to, we've kind of touched on it, but how do you think, what do you think has changed in youth ministry as a result of COVID-19? Do one of you want to take the lead on it? Maybe is there something that's changed that go for it.
You go, Martin.
Very good. Well, I think we're still experiencing some trauma, as Ben's just said, as youth leaders. I think we've recognized our fragility, and it would be good. You know how people are always talking about like the things I'll take with me outside of lockdown. You know, I'm going to go for a walk every single day, or I'm going to spend more time with my family. I'm going to sign up for less. I've got teenage kids that just do clubs all the time. We're determined they're not going to do quite as many clubs. But I think there is some good things that we can take out of this time, and I wonder whether something around remembering our fragility, our having some humility, recognizing our need for each other, recognizing the need for unity. I've seen so much unity, particularly around among Christian organizations. We're seeing it right now. You know, different organizations and movements getting together to learn together. That's amazing. Like, I wonder whether we would have seen that as much without it. So I'm encouraged that we're seeing some of that, and I think we will see more of a shift towards mixed mode youth work in the long term. I think we will see the good stuff from online carried on. There are some young people who are being more engaged in this time than ever before, because the quiet ones, the shy ones, the ones that didn't always want to come, like we've had exactly the same experience as Laura, the friend who never ever wanted to come and look round the door and see what we actually did at youth group, but are prepared to cross the threshold of YouTube to come and see what we do. So we're going to hopefully learn some lessons, and I hope we can take the best of it into the future.
Great. Laura, is there anything you want to add?
I think there's a question that's yet to be answered in all of this, and we kind of, I think, are peering at this question and haven't quite nailed it yet. But I think there's, and Martin did touch on it, there's something around content versus connection. And I think we had become really good at creating content for our young people. And content matters, content's important. But I think the emphasis of the fact that young people turn up for connection, whether that be connection with each other, that where connection with Jesus for young people has actually been really fragile, it kind of is put onto the magnifying glass in this season. And so I think there's a place for us to examine our own youth ministries in a sense, and even nationally our models of youth work in the big and in the small, and saying, do you know what, maybe we need to posture ourselves a little more again towards the connection rather than just the content. I think it's both. I think it's both and. But I think where there hasn't been connection, either to God or relationally within a youth group or to a youth leader, I think that's really shown itself in this last season. And so making sure that we're holding those two things in tension really well.
Yeah, that's great. And we were chatting on the phone the other day with Laura, weren't we? And I was saying that in this season, the little phrase that's been going around my mind is it's connection over perfection. And if you're anything like me, when moving into this era, doing things online, filming things, there can be that sort of tendency to want to make it perfect, to try and do everything perfectly, get the perfect take, and you end up doing it 3 million times to try and get that. And I just felt God say to me, it's connection over perfection. Like the young people, if you're talking about a youth context, which we are right now, they need connection. They don't need everything to be perfect, but what they do need is connection. So to prioritize connection over perfection, that's a little thing for you there. We just want to move the conversation on now to talk about a conversation that's been going on in the world right now about race, which sort of kicked off after the brutal murder of George Floyd. And it's a conversation that we've been having, DTI as a senior team. It's a conversation we've been having on a local level and in our movement as well, and I'm sure you have been as well. And we wanted just to touch on that. Of course, in the time we've got tonight, we can't solve everything, we can't answer every single question, but couple of, like, I'd love some of you guys to speak into this. You know, how should we be responding as youth leaders? Like, what are some of the conversations that we should be having with our young people? And Ben McCalla, you've got some thoughts on this to kick us off.
Sure. I think the number one thing I would suggest that we can do to engage with this positively is talk about it, which sounds extremely simple, but I think people haven't talked about it at all. And I don't mean talking about, you know, hardcore racist persecution. People are happy to talk about, you know, oh, there's this big news story that's come up, or isn't it awful what happens in that country? But the day-to-day stuff that people are having to deal with and have had to deal with for years, no one's talked about. And I found it fascinating when this horrible thing happened to George Floyd. Just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. But it wasn't, unfortunately, this is awful, it wasn't new. And I was quite surprised. I was shocked by what had happened. I was shocked by seeing the video, but I was quite surprised that it garnered so much kind of talk across social media and the wider media and all those sorts of things. And I was thinking, what's going on here? But I think the conversation, it appears to have sort of continued. And I think the best thing we can do as youth leaders is keep that going. And perhaps for some of you, you don't have any ethnic minority young people in your youth groups. That's fine. Still try and talk about it. You may not have a clue about what it's like to be an ethnic minority in this country. Read a book. Honestly, there's so much great stuff out there. We've engaged as DTI with a guy called Ben Lindsay. He's written this book that we need to talk about race. I think every single person who's involved in church ministry needs to read that book. There are a number of books that he references that are really, really helpful. There's a great book called The Good Immigrant, which is literally just a load of stories from different ethnic minorities across this country, not just black people, but all sorts of ethnic backgrounds. Just read and talk about it. And the other thing that I would say in this short space of time is, if you do have young people who are ethnic minorities in your youth group, don't be afraid to talk about it. Go in there humbly. Be ready to be taught, and recognize that everyone's experience is different. My experience will be different, someone else's, etc., etc., etc. And try your very best. And this is I'm speaking to those of you who aren't ethnic minorities. I know that the majority of people on this call will be white. So people who aren't ethnic minorities, everyone who's white, try your very best. If and when you're offended by something that you read or hear or someone that you talk to, just try your best to go with it. Unless, of course, someone is clearly being intentionally, offensive, then that's a different story. That's different. We're not up for that. But when someone perhaps says something that makes you feel like, oh gosh, I'm not so sure about that, or oh gosh, I've done that. Okay, let's engage with that. And if you're completely lost, read up about what is white privilege. What does that mean? What is it to be sort of have that feeling of discomfort, and try and engage with that, and try and engage with the discomfort as much as you can, so that I think so that the sort of the ethnic minorities aren't the ones feeling like they have to maybe tread on eggshells in the situation, and just talk about it. Sorry, that was very
great, man.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Great, mate. Martin and Laura, would you want to add anything?
I think there's a limited amount I can or should say as a white man, but there's one thing I'd love to throw in, which is I used to work in the media for a long time, and there's something in the world of the media called the news cycle, which is really important to think about and understand when we think about something like this. So at the moment, it's really easy to talk about this with young people. It's really easy to focus on it in your churches, your youth work, and you'll have seen a whole host of individuals, celebrities, brands fall over themselves to basically say, it's not me, I'm not racist. And there's we don't need to go into that. But the thing is, that happened because there was a high profile news incident. It's not the first. As Ben said, this has happened over and over and over again. Ferguson, Botham Jean, like over and over again, these things have happened. And there's always a burst of energy. The Black Lives Matter movement springs up. There's passionate campaigning. There's a burst of energy. Everyone falls over themselves to say, I'm not racist. We're going to deal with this stuff. We're going to do better. And then the news cycle can only ever last for 2 weeks. That's how the news cycle works. After 2 weeks, whatever it is, Dominic Cummings being a great example, sorry, I had to get one reference in, all right? The news media cannot sustain focus on any topic for more than 2 weeks. And so that's not speculation. That's how the media works. And so now we're starting to see, if you search for any of those hashtags on social media, like Black Lives Matter, you'll see a massive tail off in the last few days. And if we wait a few more weeks, I'm telling you, this will not be in the news. This will not be a focus anymore. The point being, we have to keep caring. This really matters. We have to keep focusing on it. It's uncomfortable. We have to keep going long term, not when it's just in the news.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add and say, as someone who is white, is that a bit of self-reflection can be really helpful as well. I think I've sat and listened to my Black friends and just heard their stories, and just been aware of how completely ignorant I've been as well, and quite emotional. I think there has and is a level of ignorance which we, as a white middle class woman, I have to really repent of, actually, because that's on my watch and that's not okay. And so as we've sat and we've talked to our young people, heard their experiences, and I think there's a piece where I personally have to come before God and say, God, this happened on my watch. I was unaware of this. But now that I am aware, awareness isn't enough. It's not enough to say I'm not racist. You have to be a part of the resolution. And so I think, as Martin said, keeping it on the agenda is really important, but on a personal level, praying that in my heart and in my life and in my ministry, this will be more than a conversation, that this will be something that elicits change in my life and the way that I see the world, but also in who I stand alongside, who I cheer on, who I push forward, who I celebrate, and how I celebrate. Yes, I think there's a personal reflection piece here for the white community as well that's really important.
Yeah, it's so helpful, Laura. Thank you. One of the things I've been thinking through is what are sort of the spheres of influence that I'm in. How am I going to influence in those areas? And I don't have all the answers at this moment, but just committed to wanting to do my best to influence in the best ways to see change in the long term. Ben Webb, how have you handled it as a local youth group?
Yeah, so for me, it's been kind of a real personal journey over the last few years, really. And as Martin said, with that kind of 2-week turnaround for the news, luckily, I'm an incredibly slow reader. So I've just started a new book, and I know that I'm going to outlive the media for this, because in a few months, I'm still going to be there, and it's still going to be something that I am turning to each week. And but for me, it has been one of those things of realizing my own privilege over and over and over again, and beginning to hear friends who I've spoken to and other youth workers and young people where you hear their story and just think, as a white male living in the UK at this time in history, I've really got some repenting to do from all those times that I myself have thought, oh, that's worked out all right for me. Even if it's subconsciously, I've just accepted things. And I think that's, for me, that's where it's had to start from. I can't lead a youth team or a youth session if I'm not utterly convicted by just how wrong this is and how much needs to change. And as I've read more and I've watched more and I've listened to things and I've just heard more about the history and the ongoing oppression of so many groups within this country and abroad, and over the past however long, you can kind of pick a number really, it's been something that I've been utterly convicted by. And we've done that thing where we ran a session about inequality, and even within that, hearing some of our young people talking about the way that they have to live being different to anything I've ever had to consider was heartbreaking. But I didn't want that to be one of those knee-jerk reactions of like, oh yeah, no, we've done our bit, we've ran our session, it's all right now, we've ticked that box. Because if that's all we're doing, then we've utterly misunderstood it. And so obviously at this time it's a little bit difficult to get our youth team together, but what we're going to be doing the next time we meet up is talking through this, and we're going to be looking at the Bible and the fact that those people aren't white. That needs to be mentioned. Like, this is our book that we look to for wisdom and courage and a path forward, and we need to realize that they're not white people. Like, it's a whole different, anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox there. But yeah, so looking at that stuff and then moving into autumn, even if this is forgotten by the media or whatever, us actually using some of the Bible passages that we can read and looking at them from a fresh perspective and allowing ourselves to understand it slightly differently and learn some of the wisdom that we may have missed before because we were looking at it from ignorant, naive, whatever the word is, looking through those eyes, through that lens, and just allowing ourselves to be challenged. And I've been reading a book called How to Be an Anti-Racist, and it's been incredible because it talks about the fact that there are racist actions and there are racist policies, but that doesn't make you a racist, full stop. You can actually go from like being challenged and going, oh, I've done that. Oh no. Okay, what can I do to change how I do that moving forward? How can I challenge myself to never do that again and to be part of that solution rather than the problem? And sadly, I don't think this is something that's going to be solved quickly or just go away. I think there will be the next wave. We've had, you think back to like Tamir Rice, way back like years ago, and then where we are now, and you think this is just the next wave of it. But it's got to be that we talk to our young people about the day-to-day things and the systemic change that is needed, and we don't shy away from those, because otherwise we're not necessarily we're doing a disservice to our young people.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Thank you guys for speaking into that. And just to say, as DTI, you guys will have seen on our social media, and that is a platform that we use to communicate, our main platform, particularly Instagram. But we're committed to seeing this change. We're committed to the conversation. We're committed to using the influence and the environments that we, and the stages to a certain extent that we're blessed to have to give everyone an equal opportunity. And you guys would have seen on our Instagram a few weeks ago, I did an interview with Ben Lindsay, and we just encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to go back and watch it. It's really good, and he's done loads of stuff. You can check him out. There's lots of people. But Laura, we're going to move on, Susie, to some quick fire questions.
Yeah, we are. So we've not got loads of time left. So these are going to be rapid questions that some of you guys have been asking. So Laura, the first one's coming at you, mate. A number of people asked this question. How do we go about, what's the best way to reach young people who don't know Jesus?
Great question, love it. I think empowering and giving confidence to the guys that you've got to be inviting their friends to stuff. I think celebrate the asks, not necessarily the wins. So celebrating when their friends ask, it doesn't matter whether they say yes or no, celebrate they've done it. And be really deliberate about putting stuff on that is an easy ask for your young people. So an easy ask for your friends to invite their friends to. So that's something maybe a little innovative that you can be thinking about with your young people in this season, but really empowering them and giving them confidence is the key.
Thanks, Laura. Ben McCalla, what can youth leaders do to help support young people's education?
Oh, I'd say speak positively about education as much as you possibly can. You know, it's natural that a young person might come in and say, oh, I've had this day, I've had that day. If you ever have the opportunity to speak well about school, about university, about getting educated, about reading, whatever, speak well about it. And I guess it's kind of the same message that I've said every time that I've been asked to say something is pay attention to the differences in your young people as individuals. Some of them will have absolutely awful times at school. If that's them, you support them in that. You are the place where they don't get bullied. You're the place where they get listened to and they can say something without, having that response. Some young people love being at school. Maybe they're working too hard. Maybe they're not getting enough sleep. Maybe they're doing too much work. You need to talk to them about how they get a bit of a break from that. So, there you go.
Brilliant. Martin, as I alluded to earlier, you're an author of the book called The Man You're Made to Be. And some questions came in. How can youth leaders best engage young men at this stage?
Yeah, really quickly. So my experience has been that this is going to be a very gendered statement, but my experience has been that boys in lockdown really struggle to communicate with their friends, really struggle to find stuff to talk about with their friends, because the topics of conversation, as they put it, just dried up because there was no football. There were no movies coming out. Like it really dried up for them. Girls, as I've experienced it, found it much easier to connect with each other. That kind of plays out into a wider canvas, which is that lads are probably less likely to ask for support. They're less likely to talk about their feelings. They're less likely to talk emotions. But statistically, we see that boys are just as likely to have issues with their mental health and actually are likely to have really significant problematic issues with their mental health, partly because they can't find a way of talking about their feelings and their emotions. So it's really important that we create opportunities for boys to talk about feelings, emotions, how they're really doing, to keep asking lads that question. The last thing I'd say is lads are much less likely to ask us for support and prayer. That doesn't mean they don't want those things. We just have to be really proactive in asking them. If we can pray for them, if we can ask them how they're doing.
Really helpful. Thanks, Martin. Ben Webb, how do you best engage with the young people over the internet? How do we re-engage with those young people who have drifted away from youth over lockdown? It's not easy.
Yeah, so it's a real tricky one, if I'm honest. I think not necessarily every time, but there's certainly space on Zoom calls. If it's not one of those evenings where people are well up for digging into the Bible or anything like that, just have fun, just mess around and chat to each other and spend time together. And if you're nervous about any of that stuff, Martin's going to love me for this. Youthscape have just released a free PDF with 31.8 that talks about how we can keep young people safe whilst working with them online. And it's a great resource. It's free, every youth worker's favorite price. So yeah, do go check it out and see what it's all about, because it is such a valuable tool to be able to do that safely and to be able to do it at all. But in terms of re-engagement and getting back in touch with the people that have kind of walked away for the moment, I think it is going to be different in every church, in every area. One thing I've started doing, and feel free to think, that's weird, that wouldn't work here, that guy's an idiot, absolutely fine. But one thing I've done is just started texting some parents and cycling to a few different houses just to hang out with the young people for half an hour or an hour, kick a ball around, just catch up, get a drink, all those kind of things, and just find out what they've done. Because it's been a quarter of a year since we've seen some of our young people, and often trying to have a conversation with them on a Sunday morning is difficult, because you might have seen them on Friday night and it's only been 36 hours. But it's been like 13, 14 weeks at this point. There's some stuff that's gone on. Even just talking about what films they've watched over the last 3 months is going to take a little bit of time. So just going and getting involved, and for me, it's been a way of targeting, working, trying to get to the year 7s and the people that are completely disengaged first, and then working my way across that way. And then just asking the young people that are disengaged, what do they want? What would they go to? What ideas have they got that we could try and like see if we can meet? Some of them utterly crazy, and there's not a chance that we're ever going to be able to do it, but I love it. It's just a chance for them to give ideas and be heard.
Laura, okay, any suggestions for materials that can be used for youth on Sundays or in small groups? Youth Alpha is a great resource. Are there any other video-based discipleship courses that you would recommend?
There are tons. There's so much stuff out there. It would be remiss of me not to mention some of the stuff Youth for Christ is doing as well. So we've got free video, and so basically when all this went down, we've released a term's worth of free online youth sessions, which are video based and designed particularly using sort of Zoom. So that's yfc.co.uk, Youth Work Online. There's stuff on there for families, for 7s to 11s and for 11s to 18s. Also that Youth for Christ do, we've got a site called resources.yfc.co.uk. Man, I'm doing well at remembering the names. And on there you can get 6 weeks free on resources that have all been adapted to either be used in a room or online as well, so you can get another so that's like a term and a half covered just there. If you're looking particularly for courses, there's a course called Clear, which is with a K, that's used. It's a great video resource. We've got Youth for Christ have got Intro Outro, which is our YouTube channel. We have a digital evangelist. So some youth groups are using that stuff and then talking about it as a youth group afterwards. There is a great American resource called Think Orange that's doing loads of really good stuff. And I think a lot of the subscription kind of content, so Scripture Union, Urban Saints, us, we are all now adapting the youth sessions that we're writing specifically to be used online with online content or in-room content. So there's loads and loads of free stuff out there. Yeah, tons. There's loads.
Great. And Martin, a question that came in: how do we get the balance right with some online contact versus discouraging our young people from being on their screens?
Yeah. Well, first thing I'd say is that my experience is that young people don't particularly want to be on screens, especially now the sun has been out more. Young people actually are pretty sick of screens. They're getting set schoolwork through screens. They're having to do their friendships through screens, and then the youth group, guess what? It's on screen. So actually, I don't think there's a massive issue. I've actually seen a decline in the amount of engagement young people in our youth group with their devices, with screens. I think there is definitely, I said it earlier, there's definitely a place for that mixed mode stuff going forward. But actually, I think there's only not to sort of disagree with what Laura just said. I think there's a limited amount of discipleship you can do through a screen. It's not ideal, and also with young people who are so used to being in discipline with their screens and having 5 windows open at the same time and 3 devices on the go, you've only got 4% of their attention when you're engaging with them online. So it's far from ideal. I don't think they really want it. I think it will be necessitated for us, but I don't see it as being like the defining part of our future going forward.
Thank you. There's a number of questions that came in about mental health, and if you weren't here on the last call, the whole last call was designated towards mental health, so just encourage you to check that out on our YouTube channel. Also, the team were just texting me as well. Some of you guys are asking lots and lots of questions as well, so we haven't got time to answer many more, but just to say, if you do have questions, then do send them into the team, because when it comes to Streaming the Impossible, we will have some opportunities to do a bit of Q&A at that. and where there's common themes and that kind of thing, we will pick them up at that. So do feel free to keep sending those through, and we will get onto them when we can. A question I did want to answer, somebody's written this, just going to read it. So it's not a question per se, but with the changing guidelines for church gatherings coming into place at the end of this week or now this week, anyone got any advice on gathering young youth groups in person, specifically looking forward to streaming the impossible, wondering whether we can use our church centre to gather our young people together in order to watch the event. And I'm going to give you a politician's answer on this because it's the best answer I can give you. Is that whichever youth group or youth organisation you belong to, you will have governance there. And so with this, coming out of COVID, coming out of the lockdown, different churches, different organisations will be on different timescales and things will look different. And so from a DTI team, we have set everything up so it can run online. And we want to encourage you to do whatever the people who you are accountable to would love you to do. So that's our answer. We would love you to gather together, whether that's online, or if it's able to, then in person. But really, it's planned to be online, so that's the way we set it up. So that's the answer for that one. In terms of sort of safeguarding documents, for if you're part of a vineyard movement, then we haven't had like a centralised safeguarding document because all the churches are sort of governed themselves. But we are in the process of putting some guidelines together that you might find helpful. And whoever on this call will be able to get those. And just email us in, and once we've got them, we'll email those out to you as well. You might find them helpful. But anything safeguarding wise, make sure that you are adhering to the policy of the church or the youth organisation that you're part of. Hopefully that's helpful. Guys, thank you so much from the panel. We're going to wrap things up, but I just love, and you don't all have to answer this, there's no pressure, but prophetically speaking, like, do any of you guys have a sense for youth work in the UK for maybe the immediate future and down the line? What's God saying? What's he doing? Laura?
Okay. I think it's hard to say, isn't it? Because we don't know whether we're out of this yet. And so there may well be a whole layer to come. But I wonder whether there is something around this connection piece, around getting back to basics a little, around the connection and perfection thing that you talked about, Susie, around connection, like genuine connection with young people, genuine connection with Jesus. I think that there's been a really interesting spiritual trend where loads of people are kind of hooking into church services, and then there's been huge disengagement again with screens. So I think there's a really interesting evangelistic piece that we've never really had to do before, where we're almost trying to, as I said before, bring back in the guys that actually already have been a part of our youth groups, and then empower the guys who have stuck with it to be with us in that. And so I think there's something in what we're doing that will be working a lot more with young people through that genuine connection, rather than youth ministry being done to young people. I think the family will play a really interesting role going forwards. Young people, whether their families are dysfunctional or not, family was important to young people anyway, and now where they've spent a quarter of the year cooped up in family, I think family ministry and all wraparound care for families will be a really interesting place going forwards. The discipleship of young people and young discipleship of the family. I think, as Martin said, the whole hybrid thing, what do we take, what do we leave in this season, is going to be interesting. But I think if this is now us coming out of the end of it, that is what I would say. However, if we go back into lockdown again and this all kicks off again, I think there will be a whole other level to this that we couldn't possibly begin to imagine at this point, potentially. I don't know that was particularly succinct or helpful, but there was some kind of off the top of my head thoughts.
Great.
McCalla, you look deep in thought. Have you got?
I just thought I'd ask the Lord and say, "There's nothing you want me to say, Lord. Just shut my mouth." So I'll just say one thing. I think there is something very powerful in being the person or the group or the sort of social circle, whatever it is, that is there for a person when everything else is stripped away. And when we went into lockdown, so many things disappeared. Who was reaching out to the young people? Who cared for the young people in that moment? And who cared about that particular young person in that moment? Who's been reaching out and trying to contact them? Yes, as things start to open up and they get invites from different people to do this and come spend money here, fair play. But where were those people? Where were those organizations? Where were those things when everything kicked off and shut down? So I think just being there for them and reaching out to them, that's a powerful message. And I'm not just talking about, right now, I'm talking about in the future, years down the line, if they grow up knowing that the church was there when they needed someone the most, the church was there reaching out to them when they needed help and support, that does things for a person as they grow up and as they form their sort of values and their ideas about what structures in their lives are trustworthy. So I think there's an immense power in that. And don't be disheartened if they start going off and getting involved in their clubs again. Be there when they need you, and trust that's a powerful thing for them.
Great. Martin, do you want to shed some wisdom?
Look, first of all, I'm blown away by what Ben just said then. I think that's fantastic. I just want to amplify that. And also what Laura shared at the start about just re-embracing Sabbath and rest. There has been some aspects of this time that have been a bit of a gift to us, as we've realized we don't actually have to have 67 social engagements in our diary every single week to function as humans. In fact, we function much better as humans without those things. So I think there's some massive stuff to learn there that I hope we take out of this time. The other thing I would say is that the sort of preeminent model of youth ministry, without getting too deep right at the end, over the last, I don't know how long, has been this thing called Moralistic, Therapeutic Deism. You heard of that? And it was a phrase coined by some American researchers probably 20 years ago or more, about what it was like for American teenagers to experience growing up in the Christian faith. And Moralistic, Therapeutic Deism was basically putting God in a place much like any other consumer item in your life. A club you might be part of, some band you might follow, a sports team. People have mentioned this team. I don't pay much attention to football myself as a West Ham United fan. But just on that's the level on which Christianity is often offered to young people. And I think, I have to soul search and say, sometimes that's the Christianity I've offered. Like on Tuesday night, you can do hockey practice, and on Wednesday night, come to church, and on Thursday, you can go and listen to your favorite band. And actually, that's not who Jesus is. He's above all of those things, and he's in all those things. And when we get to this moment of saying, why are only some of my young people feeling this primary affiliation to my youth work? Why are only some young people seeing Jesus at the center, and everyone else is like, well, sometimes I'll come to youth group, but sometimes I'll go to scouts, and sometimes I'll do hockey practice. The only way that we can help them, I think, to start to move past that moralistic therapeutic deism and begin to see Jesus as their primary affiliation is if we teach them that he is interested in every aspect of their lives and that he is present in everything. And what better time to do that than when everything is up for grabs, everything is up in the air. Jesus is present and interested in everything in their lives right now, as they're going through the pain of lockdown, some of them, as they're going through being abandoned at home for 10 hours a day. God is there present with them. Jesus is interested in every aspect of their lives. And as we teach that to them, I believe they will begin to see that Jesus is the center and the primary affiliation, the place where they should put all of their focus and energy. And out of that, everything else springs. And I believe that's what God is calling us to in this season. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited. I'm kind of hopeful coming out of this, that that's something we might be able to take hold of.
So good, Martin. Hey, mate, and guys, brilliant. We really appreciate all of you that have been part of it. Laura, Martin, Ben McCalla and Ben Webb. You guys have brought gold tonight. If you agree with that, put a clap, whatever those emojis are that are available. There's only 2, I think, but just thank people. And Yeah, guys, we're so grateful. You've been brilliant, and there's such primary affiliation. Lord Jesus, would you be the young people's primary affiliation? That is praying for, that what they give their lives to, and understand that that's what it's about. And guys, we just want to get you into groups, breakout rooms for a tiny bit of time. We're trying to nail this on 9 o'clock. We're so sorry. We wanted to have more time in breakout groups, and we've struggled to do that. So we're going to send you in for 5 minutes. Love it if you just say your name, and then I would just launch into prayer, just one by one, just launch into prayer, just thanking God for what he's doing for young people, praying that he'd pour out his spirit on the next generation. That's what we need, guys. We need a move of God. We can do our best. But God has to do the rest. We can make our plans. I can see participants are just leaving, which is very discouraging. I'm just going to say that. But guys, we're putting you in the breakout rooms. You can leave at this point and leave someone on their own in a breakout room, or you can stay and pray for young people. I just implore you to do that in this final moment. But thank you guys for all your contributions, and let's just pray.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. Hopefully you found it really helpful. We were just talking as a team, and I think, every time we talk youth ministry, you learn something every single time, and I've been really encouraged tonight. And I was just saying to the team, I think there's something really encouraging about being with people who are doing a similar role, who know what it's like to have the ups, to have the downs, and everything in between, and particularly in this season. As it's been alluded to already tonight, but somebody said to me, it's like 4 seasons in a day, and it certainly feels that. It feels like that in youth ministry as well. So thank you so much. We'd love to see you at Streaming the Impossible. Come and join us. Head to our website, and we'd just love to pray for you. Just real quick. Holy Spirit, thank you for every single person on this call. Lord, I thank you for the youth ministries that they represent, and we just pray blessing over them. That, Lord, that you would come and do immeasurably more. Lord, that you would encourage the youth leaders here who feel disheartened, who feel discouraged, that you would pour your creativity into them, that their youth ministries, God, would see you, would just see you move in power. So we pray that even over this summer, that kids would come to know Jesus. There'll be healings, there'll be freedom, there'll be salvation. And I thank you for each one of these guys, for their sacrifice, for their love for you, and for the young people. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Guys, thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. The end of a Zoom call is always a bit weird. You feel like you have to wave when you wouldn't in real life. But great to see you all, and we'll see you again soon.